Commander Grix stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Joint Military Academy, his four arms crossed tightly against his chest plate. His upper right hand absently stroked the polished insignia of the Valkyrian Elite Guard, a symbol that until 3 standard cycles ago had meant something, before the humans arrived. Commander, the new batch of cadets has completed processing. Lieutenant Dreyes, his junior officer, approached with a datapad, including the Earth contingent. Grix's scaled skin rippled with annoyance. How many of the soft bodies this time? 15, sir. The Council insists on increasing the quota every cycle. Grix snorted, a sound that resembled pressurized steam escaping a faulty valve. Wonderful. More babysitting for the galaxy's newest allies. He made air quotes with his lower set of hands, a human gesture he'd picked up and now couldn't seem to shake. Have they been issued the reinforced equipment? Last batch broke everything they touched. Yes, sir. Though the humans insisted it wasn't necessary. Of course they did. Grix turned to the massive viewport, watching the stars shift as the station rotated. They always think they understand space better than species who've been traversing it for millennia. Just because they survived first contact without soiling themselves. The Valkyrians were proud warriors, descendants of apex predators with exoskeletons that could withstand micrometeorite impacts. Their species had conquered 3 solar systems before developing faster than light travel. And now they were forced to train alongside humans, pink, fleshy creatures whose bones might as well be made of chalk for all their durability. Their file mentions they evolved on a high-gravity planet, Dreyes offered helpfully. So did the Joruvians, and we all know what happened to them when they tried to join the Galactic Defense Force. Grix laughed harshly. 3 broken spines during the first gravity fluctuation drill. Pathetic. Dreyes shuffled uncomfortably. The Council believes the humans have potential. The Council hasn't had to scrape remains off training equipment. Grix's secondary eyes narrowed, their amber color darkening to burnt orange. Well, no use in delaying the inevitable. Let's go meet our fragile new cadets. Maybe this batch will last longer than a week. As they walked toward the training bay, Grix reviewed the human files on his neural implant. Weak skeletal structure, minimal protective dermal layers, laughable muscle density. Honestly, it was a miracle these creatures had survived their own planet, let alone qualified for space travel. The universe had clearly made a mistake. Grix straightened his posture. He'd show these humans exactly what real military training entailed. By the end of today, half of them would be requesting transfers. And that suited Commander Grix just fine. The Galactic Council's decision to integrate humans into the Joint Defense Initiative had been controversial, to put it mildly. After the Nexus War with the Scourge hive mind, the Council had been desperate for new allies. Humans, with their ridiculous propensity for charging into danger and their even more ridiculous luck in surviving it, they had somehow managed to repel a Scourge scout fleet with technology that was barely post-atmospheric. The footage had gone viral across the Galactic network's primitive missile weapons and a handful of makeshift spacecraft somehow holding the line against a force that should have obliterated them. Pure dumb luck, Grix muttered to himself as he entered the training bay. Any species can get lucky once. The new cadets stood in formation, or what passed for formation among such a diverse group. The Valkyrians and Centauri maintained perfect geometric precision. The Orbulon hovered in their anti-grav fields with reasonable spacing. The humans, well, they were trying. Attention. Grix barked, watching with satisfaction as the assembly snapped to alertness. All except the humans, who seemed to have a 2-second delay in their response time. Pathetic. Welcome to hell, Grix announced, pacing before them. I am Commander Grix, your senior combat instructor. Some of you will graduate from this program. Others will wash out. Some may even die. He paused dramatically near a particularly nervous-looking Centauri. I make no apologies for the rigors you will face. Space is unforgiving. Your enemies will be worse. Grix's secondary eyes scanned the human contingent. They were shorter than most species, with their bizarre single-paired limbs and soft exterior casings. No wonder they'd invented clothes without them. They'd be perpetually injured by the simple act of existing. "You there," he pointed at a human female with close-cropped dark hair and unnaturally alert eyes. Name and planetary origin. "Cadet Alexis Parker, Earth, North American Continental Zone, sir." Her voice was steady, which was mildly surprising. "Parker." Grix rolled the name around in his mouth, disliking how it felt. "Your species has the bone density of infant Valkyrians. How do you expect to survive zero-G combat drills?" The cadet didn't flinch. "With respect, Commander, Earth gravity is 1.1 times standard galactic measurement. We're actually quite adapted to gravitational stress." Grix nearly laughed. "Gravity isn't the issue, Parker. It's what happens when that gravity suddenly shifts or disappears or reverses. Your calcium sticks will snap like kindling." "We'll manage, sir," Parker replied, her face betraying nothing. Grix stepped closer, looming over her. Despite being barely two-thirds his height, the human maintained eye contact with his primary set. Interesting. "The integration program may be mandatory." Grix addressed the entire assembly but kept his eyes on Parker. "But your survival in it is not guaranteed. I've reviewed the human physiological profiles. Your muscles tear under minimal strain. Your circulatory fluid, what do you call it? Blood? It's not even properly contained within a hardened system. You lack redundant organs. You can't even process basic atmospheric variations without technological assistance." In his head, Grix continued the litany of human weaknesses. A single-lobed brain with no backup processing, exposed sensory organs, ridiculously fragile neck structure housing critical neural connections. They were basically walking catalogs of evolutionary design flaws. "Training begins at 0500 tomorrow. First up, exposure survival. We'll see how your species handles a little vacuum." Grix turned to leave, but not before catching a glimpse of something unexpected on Parker's face. Not fear or intimidation. Was that a smile? 3 weeks into training, and not a single human had quit. This fact bothered Commander Grix more than he cared to admit. "Again," he barked at the exhausted cadets. The Centauri managed 15 repetitions. "I want to see you humans attempt at least 10 without collapsing." The training room's gravity had been cycling between 0.5 and 2.3 standard units at random intervals. The exercise, simple for most species with proper exoskeletons or multi-jointed limbs, involved traversing the obstacle course while carrying weighted packs. The humans were struggling, their faces flushed with a disturbing reddish hue that Grix had learned indicated overexertion. "Parker, your form is sloppy. Those legs aren't designed for lateral movement under load, are they?" Grix couldn't keep the mockery from his voice. Parker, sweat pouring down her face, simply adjusted her stance and continued. This, too, was infuriating. The humans never talked back. They just endured. By the 4th week, Grix had doubled the training intensity for the human contingent. He justified it as accelerated adaptation protocols, but everyone knew what it really was, an attempt to break them. Yet somehow they kept showing up each morning, bodies trembling with fatigue but eyes clear and determined. "You're going too hard on them," Lieutenant Draz warned after a particularly brutal session. "The Sentinel observer from the Council has been taking notes." "The Council insisted these creatures could handle military training," Grix snapped. "I'm simply testing their claim." The 5th week brought the combat simulations. Hand-to-hand fighting was where most non-militaristic species washed out. The humans, with their complete lack of natural weapons, no claws, no venomous secretions, not even decent teeth, should have been decimated. Instead, they were adapting. They used their smaller size as an advantage, ducking under the longer reach of Valkyrian arms. They learned quickly which body parts of various aliens were vulnerable. Most surprising of all, they seemed stronger each day, rather than weaker. This makes no sense, Grix complained to the medical officer after reviewing performance metrics. Their muscles should be deteriorating from this level of stress. Actually, the Tenaxian doctor replied, waving a tentacle dismissively, human muscles respond to micro-tears by rebuilding stronger. They call it hypertrophy. Quite fascinating, really. The revelation only darkened Grix's mood. The final straw came during paired combat drills. Cadet Parker, paired against a Centauri twice her mass, had somehow managed to incapacitate her opponent using a technique Grix had never seen before. "What was that?" he demanded, stalking across the training floor. "Leverage, sir," Parker replied, helping the dazed Centauri up. "On Earth, we call it judo. You used an unauthorized technique." "With respect, sir, you told us to use whatever means necessary to disable our opponents." The training room had gone silent. Every cadet, every species watched the confrontation. "But you think you're clever, don't you, Parker?" Grix loomed over her. "You think because you've survived this long, you're proving something?" "I'm just following orders, Commander." "No, you're undermining my authority. You're making a mockery of this program." Grix's temper, already frayed after weeks of frustration, finally snapped. "You humans think you deserve to be here, but you're nothing but soft, lucky primates who stumbled into space." Parker stood motionless, her face carefully neutral. This only enraged Grix further. "React, damn you!" And before he could stop himself, Grix's upper right hand lashed out, delivering a stinging slap across Parker's face. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent training bay. Time seemed to slow. Grix had just enough self-awareness to recognize he'd crossed a line. Striking a cadet at any cadet was strictly against regulations. He'd be reprimanded, possibly even demoted. These thoughts flashed through his mind in the milliseconds before Parker moved. Her reaction was so swift that many observers would later claim they didn't even see it. One moment she was standing there, cheek reddening from the impact. The next, her hand had snapped up, caught Grix's retreating wrist, and twisted sharply. The crack was audible from across the room. Pain exploded through Grix's arm as he felt his ulnar joint splinter. He dropped to his knees, secondary eyes wide with shock, primary ones fixed on Parker's face. She hadn't even broken a sweat. "I apologize, Commander," she said calmly, releasing his now useless wrist. "Where I come from, we're trained to respond automatically to physical attacks. 4 seconds is actually quite slow for me." Grix stared at his dangling wrist, speechless for perhaps the first time in his military career. "Someone get the commander to medical," Parker called out, stepping back. "Training is suspended for today." And just like that, a human cadet had taken command of his training room while he knelt on the floor, cradling a wrist that had been broken like it was made of nothing sturdier than a dry twig. "Hold still, Commander. The bone knitter needs precise alignment." Grix glowered at Dr. Rautek, whose 8 eyes blinked in a sequential pattern that Grix knew signified amusement. The Arachnian physician had been working on his wrist for 20 minutes, and the pain blocker was only partially effective. "Is this funny to you, Doctor?" Grix hissed. "Not at all, Commander." Another sequential blink. "Though I must admit, in my 15 cycles at this academy, you're the first instructor to have their exoskeleton broken by a human. It's a remarkable achievement." From the next biobed, Tenaxian nurse made a burbling sound that their species used to indicate poorly suppressed laughter. "I wasn't prepared," Grix muttered. "The human used some kind of specialized combat technique." Dr. Rautek adjusted the bone knitter. "Or perhaps you underestimated human physiology. It's a common mistake." The doctor pulled up a holographic display. "Look here. This is your wrist joint reinforced calcium silicate lattice, evolved for both impact absorption and striking force. The image rotated. Now, this is the human Parker's forearm structure. Grix stared at the scan. That can't be right. Oh, but it is. Unlike your exposed joints, human tendons and muscles wrap around their bones, creating a remarkably efficient tension-absorbing system. Their bone density is surprisingly high for their gravity well, and their grip strength. The doctor made a whistling sound. Well, the average human can exert nearly 300 newtons of force with just their fingers, more than enough to fracture your ulnar joint if applied at the correct angle. That's impossible, Grix insisted. They're soft bodies. They don't even have proper armor. From across the medical bay, another nurse, this one a young Valkyrian, spoke up. They don't need it, sir. Did you know humans are persistence predators? On their planet, they used to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Grix turned his primary eyes to the nurse. Nurse Tuvix, isn't it? You seem awfully knowledgeable about humans. The nurse's scales flushed a deeper blue. I've been taking xenobiology electives, sir. Humans are fascinating. They evolved on a death world, you know. A what? A death world, Dr. Raltek confirmed, finalizing the bone knit with a burst of blue light. Class 12 hazard rating, massive tectonic instability, extreme weather variations, high background radiation, significant temperature fluctuations, and apex predators that would give even Valkyrian warriors nightmares. Grix flexed his wrist tentatively. You're telling me Earth is a Class 12? That's ridiculous. Nothing evolves intelligence on a Class 12. Nothing except humans, Nurse Tuvix said with undisguised admiration. Their world tried to kill them every day, so they learned to adapt. Did you know their skeletal system can repair itself naturally? No medical intervention required for minor fractures. Grix remembered Parker's face just before she snapped his wrist. There had been no rage there. No triumph. Just calm, methodical reaction. Like a creature that had evolved knowing exactly how much force to apply to neutralize a threat. There you are, Commander. Good as new. Dr. Raltek stepped back, though perhaps give Cadet Parker a wide berth for a few days. Unless you'd like us to start reserving this biobe exclusively for you? The medical staff's amused trills and clicks followed Grix out of the bay. His wrist ached despite the bone knitter's work, but it was his pride that hurt more. He had misjudged, no, he had fundamentally misunderstood the creatures he'd been training. As he walked slowly back to his quarters, Grix found himself wondering what other surprises the humans might be hiding beneath their deceptively fragile exteriors. Grix couldn't sleep. His wrist had healed completely, but his mind remained restless. For the third consecutive night, he found himself hunched over his private terminal, access codes bypassing the usual restrictions on the Academy's xenobiology database. The computer cross-reference all recorded incidents involving human physiological responses during stress situations. The holographic display flickered, presenting a scrolling list that was far longer than Grix had expected. He selected a file at random. Incident Report 3429B, Cargo Vessel Dawnstrider. Stranded in the Cygnus Void after catastrophic engine failure. Human engineer Thomas Reeves manually vented plasma conduits while exposed to 188% standard radiation levels. Survived. Medical notes indicate cellular damage was significant but non-fatal. Subject reported being a bit woozy after rescue. Grix blinked slowly. A bit woozy? The radiation levels described would have liquefied a Valkyrian's internal organs. He selected another file. Diplomatic Security Incident 775G. During negotiations on Keldor Prime, atmospheric processors failed in the human quarters. Temperatures dropped to 15 deg G before emergency systems activated. Human Ambassador Nadia Korlov continued negotiations for 3 hours without environmental protection, sustaining only minor peripheral tissue damage. Quote, "It reminded me of winter in Siberia. Quite refreshing, actually." Refreshing? Grix's own species went into protective hibernation at temperatures below 5°C. The night deepened as Grix absorbed file after file. Humans surviving vacuum exposure for nearly 2 minutes. Humans functioning with blood loss that would render most species unconscious. Humans adapting to toxic atmospheres that should have been instantly fatal. Computer, access classified military assessment, threat level, human species. The system hesitated. Warning, information classified, counselor-level clearance required. Grix input his override codes, technically a misuse of his authority, but he needed to know. The file that appeared made his secondary eyes widen in shock. Species assessment, human, Terra, Earth. Classification, Deathworld Adaptives. Threat level, moderate to severe. Notes, despite technological limitations, humans demonstrate concerning adaptive capabilities. Physical assessment indicates misleading external fragility. It recommends caution in all engagements. Warning, humans display marked aggression when threatened and may not adhere to expected surrender protocols when outmatched. Grix leaned back, mind racing. Deathworld Adaptives? That classification was reserved for only the most resilient species in the galaxy. And the threat level severe? For creatures that had barely mastered interstellar travel? He dug deeper, finding medical evaluations that further shocked him. Humans possessed redundant organ systems, despite appearances: twin lungs, twin kidneys, a liver that could regenerate, blood that clotted almost instantly at wound sites. Their seemingly flimsy skeletons contained a self-repairing matrix of collagen and calcium that, pound for pound, was stronger than many industrial metals. Most unsettling of all was the file on human adrenal responses. In crisis situations, human adrenal glands release compounds that can temporarily increase strength by up to 300%, neutralize pain perception, and accelerate neural processing. This fight or flight response effectively transforms the baseline human into a combat-optimized organism capable of feats impossible under normal physiological conditions. Grix thought of Parker's hand snapping up to catch his wrist. Had that been this fight or flight response? Had he inadvertently triggered a combat reflex that had evolved over millions of years on a planet seemingly designed to eradicate all life? The final file Grix accessed was perhaps the most illuminating. It was a simple collection of case studies titled Interspecies Combat Incidents: Why Underestimating Humans is a Potentially Fatal Error. As the station's night cycle gave way to artificial dawn, Commander Grix finally understood. It wasn't that humans were surprisingly strong or resilient. It was that everyone else had been asking the wrong question. The mystery wasn't how humans had survived in space. The mystery was how they had survived Earth. The training bay fell silent when Commander Grix entered the next morning. The cadets stood at attention, but there was a new tension in the air. News of the incident had spread throughout the station. The mighty Vulcarian commander, humbled by a human female half his size. Grix cleared his throat, all 4 hands clasped behind his back. At ease, cadets. His gaze swept the room until it found Parker. She stood with perfect military posture, face impassive. The bruise on her cheek had already faded to a pale yellow, another surprise about human physiology he'd discovered in his research. Their epidermal healing rate was remarkably efficient. Before we begin today's exercises, I have a matter to address. Grix's voice sounded strained even to his own ears. Cadet Parker front and center. Parker stepped forward, her movements precise and controlled. The other cadets watched with barely concealed interest. Even Lieutenant Draz, standing at the side of the training bay, leaned forward slightly. Cadet Parker, Grix began, then stopped. This was more difficult than he'd anticipated. Yesterday I acted in a manner unbefitting an officer of the Galactic Joint Military Academy. I struck you in anger, which violated not only Academy regulations but also the trust that must exist between instructor and cadet. Parker stood motionless, her eyes fixed on a point just above Grix's primary set. My actions were Grix struggled to find the right word. Inexcusable. And for that I offer my formal apology. The silence in the training bay deepened. A Valkyrian commander apologizing to a human cadet was unprecedented. Grix could practically feel the shock radiating from his fellow officers. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Parker's voice was steady. "Granted," Grix said, somewhat reluctantly. "Thank you for your apology, Commander." "I accept it." She paused, then added, "And I apologize for breaking your wrist." My response was disproportionate to the provocation. Grix blinked all four eyes in surprise. "You're apologizing to me?" "Yes, sir. On Earth we have a saying, the strongest warriors know when to hold back their strength. I failed to do that yesterday." "I slapped you," Grix said, confusion evident in his voice, "and I could have simply blocked or deflected. Breaking your wrist was unnecessary." Parker's face softened slightly. "But where I come from, we're taught to end physical confrontations quickly and decisively. It's a habit that's hard to break." Grix stared at her, seeing the human in a new light. "Where exactly do you come from, Parker?" "I grew up in a region called Alaska, sir. Winter temperatures regularly drop to 40 deg C. I was taught hand-to-hand combat by my grandmother, who served in something called Special Forces. She believed in being prepared for anything." "I see." Grix found himself oddly impressed. 40 deg would kill a Valkyrian in minutes. "It's not so bad when you're used to it, sir." Was that a hint of a smile on Parker's face? "We have another saying, it's not the cold, it's the wind chill." Unexpected laughter bubbled up from Grix's throat, a sound that startled the entire assembly. Even Parker's composure cracked, her eyes widening slightly. "Very well, Cadet Parker. Consider us even." Grix turned to address the entire group. "Today's lesson will focus on species-specific combat adaptations. Each of you has evolutionary advantages and disadvantages. Understanding them, both yours and your opponent's, can mean the difference between victory and defeat." He gestured to Parker. "Cadet Parker has agreed to demonstrate some human combat techniques. We pay attention particularly to their use of leverage and momentum to overcome superior strength and size." As Parker moved to the center of the training area, Grix added, "And for those of you partnering with humans during these exercises," he held up his newly healed wrist, "I suggest you take them very, very seriously." The training proceeded with a new energy. For the first time, Grix found himself genuinely interested in the capabilities of his human cadets. He watched as Parker efficiently demonstrated joint locks and throws that utilized an opponent's own mass against them. Several of the larger species, including 2 Valkyrian cadets, found themselves unexpectedly pinned to the training mats. "Humans don't have exoskeletons or redundant limbs," Parker explained as she helped a dazed Orbulon to its feet. "So we developed fighting styles that target vulnerabilities common to most bipedal and quadrupedal species. Like structural weak points," Grix observed. "Joints, balance centers, neural clusters." "Exactly, sir." Parker nodded. "We can't outmuscle a Valkyrian in pure strength contests. But we can absolutely exploit the fact that your elbow joints only bend in one direction." The day ended with joint species training exercises that, for the first time, treated the humans as equals rather than fragile liabilities. As the cadets filed out, Grix found himself standing beside Parker. "Your demonstration was educational, Cadet." "Thank you, sir. Your wrist seems to have healed well." "Valkyrian medical technology is excellent." Grix hesitated, then added, "Though I understand humans can heal broken bones naturally, without intervention. It takes longer, but yes." Parker smiled. "We're full of surprises, sir." "So I'm learning," Grix replied, and was surprised to find he meant it. "And that, esteemed council members, is why I'm proposing a complete overhaul of the joint species combat training protocols. Commander Grix stood before the Galactic Security Council, all four arms gesturing to the holographic display behind him. Our current system fails to capitalize on the unique evolutionary advantages of each member species. Counselor Thrav, a massive Centauri with gleaming chitin, leaned forward. You're suggesting we incorporate human combat methodologies? The same humans you once described as, and I quote, evolutionary disasters waiting to happen? Grix's scales rippled in what the Council now recognized as the Valkyrian equivalent of embarrassed throat clearing. My assessment was premature and, frankly, wrong. The first graduating class of human cadets has demonstrated exceptional adaptability. Their perspective has proven invaluable, particularly in crisis response scenarios. Indeed, chimed in Counselor Zet Nay of the Orbulon Collective. The recent incident at Proxima Station seems to support your position, Commander. The incident in question had occurred 3 solar weeks prior. A routine patrol near the contested Proxima sector had encountered a Scourge Scout vessel, the first sighting in nearly a year. What should have been a standard containment operation had spiraled into disaster when the Scourge ship self-destructed, damaging the patrol vessel's life support systems. The environmental controls had failed, flooding the ship with radiation levels that should have been fatal to the entire crew. Captain Parker's report was most impressive, Counselor Thrav admitted. Particularly the part where she manually realigned the radiation shields while exposed to levels that our medical experts assure me would kill most sentient species within minutes. Excuse me, Captain Parker has always been exceptional, Grix said, unable to keep a note of pride from his voice. But her actions at Proxima Station merely highlight what I've come to understand about humans in general. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways every day. This has made them uniquely suited for emergency response in conditions that other species find challenging. You're suggesting we make humans our first line of defense in hazardous situations? Counselor Zet Na's central eye blinked skeptically. I'm suggesting we recognize that every species in this alliance brings unique survival adaptations to the table. The Valkyrians have our exoskeletal strength. The Orbulon have their psionic sensitivity. The Centauri have their multistage metabolic systems. Grix gestured to the data scrolling beside him. And humans have their remarkable adaptability and endurance. Together we are stronger than the sum of our parts. The council chambers buzzed with discussion as Grix concluded his presentation. After a brief deliberation, the measures passed with a surprising level of support. As the session adjourned, Grix found Captain Alexis Parker waiting in the antechamber, now wearing the insignia of a full fleet officer. "Quite the speech, Commander," she said with a grin. "I especially enjoyed the part where you neglected to mention how you discovered humans were useful in radiation-heavy environments." Grix's scales flushed a deeper blue. "Ancient history, Captain. Besides, my wrist healed perfectly." "And my cheek." Parker touched the spot where, a year ago, Grix's hand had made contact. "Though I still maintain my reaction time was embarrassingly slow. 4 whole seconds? My grandmother would have disowned me." "Yes, well, perhaps we could agree not to include that particular training technique in the new protocols," Grix said dryly. "The medical bay is busy enough without my officers constantly getting their limbs broken by humans who feel slighted." Parker laughed, a sound Grix had come to appreciate over the past year of working together. "Fair enough. Speaking of protocols, how does it feel to be the galaxy's leading advocate for human-alien integration? Quite a change from the commander who once described us as walking bags of mostly water." "I prefer to think of it as evolution," Grix replied, matching her humor with his own. "After all, adaptability is the key to survival. I believe a certain species taught me that." As they walked toward the transit station, Grix's communicator pinged. "Another Scourge sighting, this one near the Regal Quadrant." The Council would be deploying a joint species response team within the hour. Duty calls, Parker noted, reading the alert on her own device. Indeed. Grix straightened his posture, military training reasserting itself. I assume you'll be volunteering your team for the radiation sweep? Naturally, Parker's eyes glinted with the same determination he'd first noticed a year ago in the training bay. After all, what's a little deadly radiation between friends? Grix shook his head in mock exasperation. You humans and your bizarre relationship with imminent death. Oh please, Parker punched him lightly on his armored shoulder, a human gesture of camaraderie he'd grown accustomed to. You know you'd be lost without us. Perhaps, Grix admitted as they boarded the transit shuttle. Though I'd appreciate it if you'd stop breaking my officers' exoskeletons during training demonstrations. The replacement costs are becoming problematic. No promises, Commander. Parker's grin widened. Some lessons just take more than 4 seconds to learn. As the shuttle launched toward the fleet yards, Grix found himself chuckling, a sound that would have been unimaginable a year ago. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. And sometimes the best lessons came from the most unexpected teachers.